Lesson six is about closing the deal. So in step five or lesson five, you learn how to get your offer accepted. Now that it's accepted, we're going to talk about from that point on through closing when you actually get the property, the big, fun, happy day. So if you're not paying cash, you're probably going through a lender. So at this point, if you follow the correct steps, you've already been pre approved and you've started the communication process with the bank or lender who's going to help you close the deal. So it's important to secure financing through a reputable lender. Excellent communication, speed, and reliability are very important. So the lender is going to ask you for certain documents that you need for your loan, and it's going to be important to get them over to the lender or their loan processor as fast as possible. The loan can move as fast as you move typically, but most people consider a normal loan application process, or let's say you get your offer accepted and you're going to close, 30 days is pretty normal. Some banks and lenders are really fast. They can do them in 15, 20 days. Some take a little longer. So it's important to just talk to your bank or lender up front, get an idea of how long it's going to take and what exactly are you going to need to do. Part of that process is usually going to involve the appraisal. So the bank is going to handle the appraisal ordering process. They'll probably just send you a link to pay for it. As a buyer, you don't get to talk to the appraiser. Typically, the bank doesn't even talk to the appraiser directly up front. They just put in an order and a local appraiser goes out to do the job because they want to keep it unbiased. They don't want anybody influencing the appraiser or getting them to change the value on it at all. So it's an unbiased third party process when you're getting an appraisal. So also, as I mentioned earlier, an appraisal and home inspection are two separate things. The appraisal is the bank's eyes on the property. They want to make sure that the value's there, that there's not a bunch of issues that would affect the value of the home. Where a home inspection, they're your eyes. So the home inspector is going to go out and they're going to test the mechanicals out. They're going to look at everything in the house, from the foundation to the roof. And the general home inspectors, they're typically not, for example, like a foundation expert or a roof expert. If they see some issues that they notice with like a roof or foundation, HVAC system, they're probably going to recommend that you reach out to a specialist for, let's say, a foundation expert if they see something that might be an issue there. So that general home inspection report might trigger you to reach out to some more experts and specialists depending on what they call out. But everything in this process, you want to move as fast as you can. You don't want to be dragging your feet because sometimes if you need to make a decision or take steps in a certain direction, it takes a little bit of time during this underwriting process. It's not like, hey, here's my stuff, boom, they instantly review it and then it's done. I mean, there's a few layers it goes through, so it's not just instant feedback. Um, when you're going through this process, it's important, do not take out any new loans. Don't be moving a bunch of money around. And honestly, if you've got a bunch of cash in the bank or cash in a safe that's not in the bank, that's typically going to do you no good for a mortgage underwriting process. The bank or the underwriter is not going to want to see you just take 10 grand cash and put it in the bank if you've got no proof of where that came from. And if it's been sitting in your safe for a year or two, there's really going to be no way most of the time to prove where it came from. So that money that you're using for your down payment, it's most of the time it needs to have been sitting in the bank for a couple months. Or if it's new funds coming in, let's say you got an insurance payout or a bonus at work, or you sold some property or personal assets, you're going to need documentation that corresponds with that and everything lines up. Because they're looking, the underwriters for the bank, they're looking at every detail. And if there's a way that someone could game the system or find a loophole, they're going to not allow that. Because if there's a loophole, people are going to exploit it over and over and over again. Just like what happened in the 2008 financial crisis with the mortgage industry getting blown up. Well, there was a lot of loopholes and people exploited these loopholes thousands of times over and over again. And that's what led to a lot of issues later. So lending is a lot more strict today than it used to be. When it comes to closing day, at this point, your loan's been all approved. You're going to wire your down payment to the title company, or you're going to bring in a cashier's check. I personally like to do a cashier's check if it's under 50,000 that I need for my down payment. If it's over 50,000, at least in my area, you're probably going to be required to wire that money to the title company. Now, wire fraud is a huge issue in this industry. So you got to be really careful when it comes to getting those wire instructions. I would not ever have the title company just email you the wire instructions. They might use a secure third party messaging app. Those are usually pretty safe, but you don't want it just through email because there's a lot of scammers out there that can find out you're buying this house and they might try to send you fake wire instructions so that you wire them the money instead of the title company. And they're pretty savvy. I've seen people today doing phishing scams where they have email addresses and they know the names of the title agents, and it looks like it could be them, but maybe there's just one digit off on their email. So, what I like to do is I like to call the title company and say, hey, this is John. I'm buying a property. Here's my name. Can you tell me which property I'm buying just so you can or I can verify that you're the legit title company? Maybe ask them a couple questions that they would only know if they were the legit title company, and then say, hey, can I get those wire instructions now? I was just trying to be safe and prevent any issues from happening or any kind of wire fraud issues. So that's a huge deal, is be really safe and careful when it comes to getting your cashier's check or wire. Cashier's check, I mean, that's not really too risky, but the wire, be very careful and don't get scammed. I like to really overemphasize that. So that is lesson 6. So let's move on to lesson 7. Now that you've already, at this point, you just closed on a property. Congratulations. Let's talk about what everything else looks like going forward.